Hello, out of this binary. Today I am making a very unscripted, very unprepared video because I've been having a really hard time thinking of a topic to talk about, and I realize that since Fluffy Week is like every other week, that I should probably think of some important things to talk about. And so I kind of thought of this at the last minute, and it's gonna sound really shaky, but I wanted to talk about a sort of phenomenon that I've noticed, especially in like a couple years ago when I used to hang out with almost exclusively cis people. And when I actually had straight friends. I can't think of a single friend that I hang out with regularly now that is straight, which like I've sort of entered the queer bubble, so to speak. So I haven't done this as much recently, but when I was hanging out with more cis straight people, I noticed myself doing this. And I've heard a lot of people of color talk about this phenomenon as well. And it's kind of interesting to experience it on some level as a white person, because of my gender. And that's being told, hey, you're one of the good ones, or, you know, or like being the exception to the rule, basically. Like, for example, I had a friend my freshman year of high school, and he frequently visited 4chan, was a Republican. Not sure why he was friends with me, though. And also, being the first trans person, or let alone the first non-binary person someone has met, is kind of an interesting experience because people have, or at least seem to have in my experience, this idea that non-binary people either don't exist in real life and only exist on the internet, or that when they do come across us in real life, we get really angry and aggressive when we're misgendered, and expect everyone to just automatically just know our pronouns just by looking at us, when in reality we know that we aren't just gonna be called they by everyone. That's not everyone's default. And so we're used to being misgendered, and I'm used to being misgendered. So when someone misgenders me, I don't freak out and yell at them. And when people realize that, when I do address when I'm misgendered, I'll mention it politely. Like, hey, actually, I go by they, and I'll politely remind people if I've already told them before, or I just won't mention it at all and kind of pick my battles kind of situation. And as these people get to know me more, they find out that I have a life outside of my gender, I have an identity outside of my gender, and that there's more to me, that, you know, I get good grades in school, so I must be really smart. And that actually surprises people. Sometimes, like the other day, not the other day, but maybe about a month ago, I was sitting next to this girl in class, and she's more politically conservative, not totally alt-right, but she's, sort of on the, right sort of skeptic side of the spectrum, and, I've seen her on social media especially, she's more vocal about it than she is in real life. For example, our local Petco got gender-neutral bathrooms, and she got upset on Facebook about it. So that's the kind of person that I sat next to in Spanish for a few months. And she has a history with my friends. She has beef with, like, my best friend. It's difficult. But being the kind of person I am, I was really nice to her. I didn't hold any grudges against her. I thought, I'll just treat her like any other person, because, I have to work with her anyway, and so I'll help her out and I'll be friendly to her, and she was friendly to me back, and, it was obvious that she actually wanted to be friends with me and wanted to get to know me a little bit better, and I could tell that I kind of surprised her a little bit, because I was in the Spanish class that everyone was doing poorly in, but I was the only person that was really doing well, because I've studied a foreign language before, and I pick up on them pretty easily, and I'm more used to rigorous classes than a lot of the kids at my new school are. So I did really well in that class, and she found out about my GPA, and that I've gotten almost all A's throughout high school, and she seemed pretty surprised about that. Like, wow, someone like you is really smart. And I think the other day she tried to compliment me by saying, like, wow, you're, like, actually intelligent. And I'm like, wow, I'm intelligent. What a surprise, what a shocker that, like, a non-binary person can be smart, because it seems like people tend to perceive non-binary people as sort of delusional. Like, I know, like, when I have talked to people that are like, well, obviously there are only two genders, and if you think you're something else, you're stupid and delusional. Like, that seems to be, like, a fairly common notion. And it's interesting because we think critically about things that other people might not think about critically, like gender, because we're kind of forced to, because if we don't fit into the binary, then we're kind of, and this is clearly wrong, and, it's easy to do research on the internet nowadays, whereas people who've never had to question it haven't. And I feel like in this way, non-binary people tend to be more critically minded and more critical thinkers. And I'm not applying that to all non-binary people, obviously, but I just can see how that stereotype may not be very accurate. We're not delusional. We know what we're talking about. But because because being non-binary is such a wild concept to some people, they might perceive it as just, a stupid person on the internet. And so this girl seemed pretty surprised that I'm intelligent, like, in general. And I'm not trying to brag about my intelligence or anything like that, or trying to brag about my grades. That's not really what I intend to do. I'm just wanting to point out that, like, the fact that I do well in school, and the fact that I come off as smart to other people, that I was doing well in this class that everyone else wasn't doing so well in, she was surprised about that, and I could kind of tell that, me being really nice to her, and me not, like, picking fights or arguing about anything, like, as she got to know me, she's like, wow, this non-binary person is nice and smart and will help me with my homework. That's kind of cool. And so I feel like, on one hand, I sort of changed her perspective on what non-binary people are like, that we're not always hostile. But on one hand, she sort of gave me a backhanded compliment by saying, like, wow, you're actually intelligent. And I don't know if she was referring, I don't know if she meant that in a, you're smart for a non-binary person or a trans person kind of way, or if she was just saying that because she knows a lot of dumb people. But I just thought the whole thing was pretty interesting. And back to freshman year, I had a few friends that weren't so well versed in gender, and I was out as agender by then. I, told people, and I had some friends that were pretty rude about it. I had a friend who insisted on calling me it because they is not grammatically correct, even though it is. He insisted on calling me it, and I had to tell him repeatedly, dude, stop doing that, or I'm gonna have to eat lunch with someone else. Like, I won't put up with that. But then at the same time, I was friends with those people, and I bonded with those people, and I guess they started seeing me as, like, one of the good ones. Like, oh, I'm not transphobic. I have a trans friend, Andy. Or they would start, like, talking shit about, like, oh yeah, this person on the internet got really mad about their pronouns, and I hate people who, are obnoxious about their pronouns or use weird pronouns. Oh, but you're the exception. Like, you're okay. You're one of the good ones. Because you don't throw a fit when you're insulted. Kind of interesting how that works out. And I have sort of a tendency to let people walk all over me. And I try to be as humble as possible in every situation and not upset anyone. And that's hard to do as a non-binary person, I feel like, because my gender is gonna ruffle some feathers. So either I don't come out to people, or when I do come out to them, I give them more slack than they deserve, it seems like. And, I mean, I don't really have a conclusion to this video. This was just kind of a ramble. I hope I made some sense. But I'll see you next week. Bye!